Hey there, thanks for joining for a story today and just taking some moments in the Word to listen together and see how we might be impacted. Before this story took place, the people of Israel had been in bondage in Egypt for over 400 years, something like 430 years. And Pharaoh had been really brutally mean to the people and had been killing all the baby boys to keep their numbers down, to keep the numbers of people that could be in an army down. And God raised up a young boy named Moses, who was raised actually in Pharaoh's court, even though he was Hebrew. And for 40 years he was in Pharaoh's court. He went to see how his brethren were doing. He was shocked to see they were in slavery, and he ended up killing an Egyptian in an incident. Because of that, Pharaoh wanted to kill Moses, and so Moses fled to the land of Midian, and there stayed with the priest of Midian, Jethro, married one of the priest's daughters, and has been there now 40 years. So Moses is 80 years old. He had been in the palace for 40 years, and now in the desert in Midian for 40 years. And that's where this story begins. So Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, who was the priest of Midian. And he'd taken the flock to the back side of the desert, to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord came down into a bush as a flame of fire. So the bush was burning, but it was not being consumed. Moses noticed this and thought to himself, I wonder why this bush is burning and not consumed. I will go and look and see what I can discover. When the Lord saw that Moses had turned towards the bush, the Lord God spoke to Moses from the burning bush, saying, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. And the Lord said, Do not come any closer, but take off your sandals, for the ground where you're standing is holy ground. And the Lord said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. We're going to stop there this week. We'll come back to it next week. I'm just wondering, Moses has been in exile for 40 years. He's living in a foreign place among people that don't speak the same language or worship the same God. He's been separate from his family for all those years. I wonder, what might that have felt like to Moses? What do you think? How might that have impacted or how it felt just to him to be so far away for so long? And then we notice in the beginning of the story that Moses is tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. I wonder, after 40 years, could Moses have been doing something else? Could he have been tending his own flock of sheep, perhaps? What might we learn about Moses that he's tending the flock of his father-in-law? Might this tell us more about what was going on for him, how it might have felt to be Moses? And we see that God sent an angel of the Lord to come down into a bush so it was on fire but not being consumed. That's kind of an extraordinary feat. Could God have gotten Moses' attention some other way? And what might have gotten his attention? Or what might we learn about Moses? That it took a bush, a flame, without being consumed to capture his attention. Does that tell us anything else about him? Could we learn that this guy was dealing with a lot of discouragement? I don't know, depression? Despair even? Who knows? Do you know? Do you have an idea? What are your thoughts about Moses? I think it's important for us to notice, because when we learn about God, that he went to such an extraordinary feat to get Moses' attention, makes me wonder if Moses would have noticed anything else. But that God went to such an extraordinary feat, what might we learn about the character of God? that he reached down and spoke to Moses from that bush, saying his name twice, Moses, Moses. How might that have impacted Moses? To not only see a bush being burned, a bush aflame without being consumed, but to hear his name coming from that bush twice and identify as just being there. Here I am, he said. And what impact might it have had on Moses to hear this voice tell him that the ground is holy, so take off your sandals, and that this is the God of his father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but first the God of your father. Do you think Moses felt separated from his family, separated from his father? At 80 years old, there's a good chance his father was no longer living. How might have it impacted him to have God say, I am the God of your father? Might that have built some connection for Moses? What might that have felt like? I wonder what we might learn about this season in Moses' life. 40 years is a long time, isn't it, to be in exile? 40 years is a long time to be away from family. And 80 years is how long he's been away from his family, really, because he was raised in the palace. So, man, what a life journey this was for Moses. So I'm wondering, in the story we see that God took extraordinary means to get Moses' attention because he'd been in a really hard place for a long time and maybe was dull of hearing. You know, we've been in a hard place for not that long a time, just a year and a half or so, or a little over a year. And yet, must God go to extraordinary means to get the attention of people today? And what kinds of extraordinary means might God use to get people's attention? How has God done something extraordinary in your life to get your attention? And did you notice? Did you listen? I wonder, we might wonder about the level of discouragement or depression even that Moses was feeling. Today, do we see people feeling depressed and discouraged because of a long season, a hard season, a confusing season, a season where there's double messaging all the time? And what might that look like for someone to be discouraged today? Have you been discouraged? Or has someone you known been discouraged or depressed in this season? I want you to hear, in this story we see that God knew exactly where Moses was all that time, and that God came to him and called him by name. Listen today, I believe God's reaching out to you. God's saying your name, twice even, to get your attention, to call you into relationship, to call you into fullness, to call you into presence with him. Thanks for listening. Have the best day. Bye now.